If performance reviews were a drug, they wouldn't pass FDA criteria to be safe for human consumption.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here.
Hey everyone, it's Ben Eubanks, host of We're Only Human. I'm so glad you're here with us and looking forward to a fun conversation today. We're going to talk about performance. We're going to talk about how to help our people do better, be better, work better, all those sorts of things. And today I have not one, but two incredible guests with me to explore this conversation. I have Debra Squyres here with me from Bonusly. Debra and I have been kicking around these ideas about how to help create better performance at work, how to enable our managers for goodness, over a year now, and it's been so much fun. And I also have Hope Weatherford with me. She's the VP of People at Fountain. And Fountain is one of the key leaders out there in terms of hiring, supporting, and enabling a frontline workforce. So it's going to be a great conversation, and I'm so glad both of you are here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
For sure. So before we get some of the fun stuff, Hope, would you start us off real quick? Tell us a little more about who you are, what you do, please.
Sure. Well, my name is Hope Weatherford. I lead the people team here at Fountain, and Fountain has pioneered the first enterprise platform built exclusively for frontline access and frontline success. So basically, we hire, manage, and retain frontline workers for all of the companies that keep the world going around for us. We deliver world-class candidate experience, and I'm super excited to have this conversation today because I've worked extensively in remote and distributed teams, and I bring a different level of insights into how performance management, recognition, how they need to evolve to meet the demands of today's workforce.
Excellent. When Hope's not at work, what does she like to do?
Oh gosh. Well, lately I have been enjoying house hunting.
Oh.
So looking to make a move a little bit later once the school year wraps up.
Okay. Like a hand-to-hand combat, possibly, depending on the neighborhood you're looking in. Okay. Tremendous.
That's true.
Yes, I know all too well. All right, Debra, tell us about yourself, please.
Awesome. Sure. I'm Debra Squyres. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Bonusly. Bonusly is the platform that goes beyond recognition to nurture and build the relationships that matter at work, from company to employee, employees with each other, and managers and their teams. I have the good fortune of being responsible for the customer experience here, and that starts in the sales process and runs throughout their entire tenure or life cycle with the company. So my focus is really on ensuring that we're partnering with companies to build a better workplace, to really make work better. I come to this role from a very different background than most customer success leaders. I started my career in the HR space in enterprise HR departments back in the 90s, back when we had file rooms. We were still doing performance reviews the way that we do them today, but we were doing them on paper. So my perspective is really built on my history and my foundation, my roots in HR, helping teams and managers try to bring out the best in their teams. And so it's a real personal passion of mine.
Tremendous. Well, I'm glad you're here. Debra, what's your fun fact? You're not in your bio staff audience who's keeping track out there.
Let's see. Well, my fun fact would not be that fun would be house hunting. That is like the most stressful thing I can think of. I recently picked up Pilates and I'm really enjoying Pilates. I've added that to kind of my whole wellness and self-care routine. I love to cook and bake. I love to host people, and I love to drink wine. So there, I've got a lot of my passions are focused on food and wine.
And then you have Pilates to balance you out. So you've got
exactly
all the things covered, the circle of life all the way around. Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm so glad both of you are here bringing different perspectives and really helping to shape this conversation. And so we're gonna just kick it off here. Hope, I'm gonna start with you. What do you think is wrong with the way that most companies are managing performance today?
Yeah, I really think, as Debra kind of alluded to, right? It's like we're still doing the same things that we've been doing since people were writing it down on paper. We have amazing technology. We know a lot more about how people interact with each other. We know that the workforce has changed. We know that where people work and how they work has changed. And I'm not sure that we've caught up to it yet. from a performance management perspective, right? A lot of times when you think about like remote work or even hybrid work, you're not getting those daily interactions face to face. And so you may miss some of the things that drive someone's performance. And when you're only looking at this at performance maybe once, maybe twice a year, and having those really thoughtful conversations, feedback that you might have never given comes up then, and it could have been something that was solved a lot earlier. I think when you think about looking backwards, I think that's also a problem, is we're always looking backwards in a traditional performance review kind of setting. And being able to give that real-time feedback obviously makes, so much of a large difference there as well. Obviously, it can help drive performance. It can just change the way that somebody feels about their role. And also, really it allows you to have those motivating kind of conversations to figure out is what's going on? Is this the type of, maybe it's the role that's not the right fit. Maybe it's the person that's not the right fit, but you can solve that before you have to go back and have a number of those conversations at one time, right? And then you're trying to remember, like, what the heck happened back in March when it's, December. And then I think too, it's really hard for not only the employees, but for the managers as well. It's like really stressful. You have to think back of all the things that you've done, prove your case in some instances, that no matter if you're a manager or employee, I think probably everybody feels that way, in some level. And that's not what the intended outcome of a performance review is. But a lot of times those are the feelings that people walk away from, regardless if they have an amazing performance review or if they have one that they wish would have gone a little bit better.
So that's one of the things that stands out to me in the research is people say, I have to spend so much time trying to prove myself instead of trying to improve myself when we're talking about performance. And if it's just, what have you done for me lately? What are you going to do for me next? If that's the only entirety of the conversation, then that gets really old really quickly. Debra, what are you seeing? So y'all are really working with a lot of employers. They're trying to solve for this in creative ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would have asked this question or answered this question right off, like, what is actually right with performance management and the way that we do it? Like,
much shorter conversation.
At this point, what's not wrong with it is the real question, right? Look, the data shows that only 2% of CHROs believe their performance management process works. And in a third of the cases, traditional performance management actually makes performance worse. So if performance reviews were a drug, they wouldn't pass FDA criteria to be safe for human consumption. We literally are using a process that started in World War I in the 19-teens on the battlefield, where the Army was trying to determine whether they should transfer or discharge soldiers. So it's really not surprising that it doesn't work in the modern workplace in 2025. And so we look at this all wrong. We've kind of fallen into this habit of doing what we've always done instead of doing what we know works, which is frequent communication focused on giving people those tidbits of coaching and advice that help them meet the goals that they're facing right now, not reflect back on the goals that they may have achieved or not achieved 6 months ago. What people want is to know that you're invested in their success. And the best way that you can be invested in their success is to help them in the moment in achieving what lies ahead. And by really changing the dynamic and focusing on frequent, ongoing communication on the right topics all along the way, it's not just about goals and goal achievement. It's about personal growth. It's about celebrating successes. It's about building that relationship and trust. And that's really what's missing in the workplace, much less the performance management process.
Hope, you mentioned looking backwards a minute ago. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that's such a common approach? Is it because we've been taught that way? Is it because it's easier to look back than it is to have a hard conversation about what's next for Debra here at the company? Why do you think we fall back into that, or we as like the manager community falls back on that so easily?
I think a lot of times it goes back to, hey, I'm a manager, and this is what I learned in my intro to manager class, if I had one. And and I think it is very similar to like what Debra said. This has just been something that's been going on for a number of years. It hasn't evolved into the way that it it should be. One of the things I was thinking as Debra was talking, a lot of times, depending on the type of role that you're in or the type of company and just the way that the world's working right now, whatever goal you put in at the beginning of the year, even when you hit your mid-year, it's likely really different. Or the importance has moved, it has shifted to something that you spend, more of your time working on. And then you're going back and being like, let's talk through your 3 goals that you put in. And that, for me, that's just like one of those moments where you're like, this goes to show how broken the process is in most cases, because it's not even relevant. And then you're trying to prove yourself. Yes. And then you're trying to go get feedback on something that you never did, but you're like, oh, great job. Or, hey, that didn't work out.
It feels like a weird game, if you want to call it that, where when your goals do change, you're like, oh gosh, look at all these great things I've done. That was really accounted for back in January. So none of that's going to count when it comes time for them to look at, did you meet these other goals we set regardless? And so, that's like your incentives are all misaligned with the things you're trying to do day to day. They may give you a high five this month, but at the end of the year, they'll say, well, you were supposed to do that, Hope. Why didn't you actually? Yeah. That I spent 6 months, fixing all these other problems. And so,
things shift so quickly in business. And so there's that reality. And the workforce today, we as consumers, we want immediate gratification. We also want immediate feedback or confirmation. And so this arbitrary once a year or twice a year, it serves a purpose. There's a reason that it is conducted. It's just not working. And the reality is you can turn that on its head, take a very much a grounds up approach and accomplish the same thing. And we've all known that it's broken for decades. We just haven't had the solutions, and we haven't really put them out in front of the teams to use in a way that is actually easy and makes it easier for them to show up at their best and to be their best for their team members.
Yeah. And, I think, Debra, for me, one of the things that really ties back to being able to have that instant gratification and real-time feedback, it's something that's just, I literally just got a message from my son's school because he found an arrowhead at school, and it's a really big deal. My son came home yesterday and told me about it, and they're on top of getting me that message that I don't know what they're going to do with it, but it's going to go to a museum or something. I'm in Florida. There's lots of them. It's a really big deal for him. And when you think about that, and you think about the way that as you're providing that real-time feedback, you think about the recognition that goes into that. And the recognition piece can completely change the dynamic of how somebody feels when they come to work that day, that week, that month, that hard quarter, maybe a very successful quarter, or maybe one that was a lot harder than you expected it to be. But I think being able to have a space to have the real-time feedback and not have to have something that's a rigid approach to how you do things, but being able to share those just makes for a much happier and honestly, a much more productive team.
Well, the reality is that I'm sorry, Ben.
You're okay. Go for it. You're fine.
I wondered when you kicked this off if you were going to be able to keep us reined in or not.
I'd never want to speak again, basically. It's okay. We're good.
The reality is recognition is a form of feedback. And recognition, when you do it right, is timely, it's specific, it aligns what you're recognizing to what either the company values are or the company objectives are. Yeah. So you're not only reinforcing for that individual that they should continue on that path, but if you're doing it publicly and being transparent, you're sending that message to each and every team member across the company, which is critical because it surfaces the behaviors and the work that matters. It also creates this visibility for managers with their team members as to what they're actually working on. Because the reality is, as a manager, without some sort of recognition platform that is public, like a Bonusly, where you can see what people are actually getting accolades for, you only see a small sliver of what somebody's working on. So your ability to be effective as a manager is wildly limited in a situation where you don't have public, frequent, very specific recognition that gets shared.
So one of the things that reminds me of is I was looking at some of our new data with our team this week, Debra, and he was saying, why do you think Gen Z as a population is more interested in working in offices? Like, I thought they would have all wanted the remote stuff. And I said, well, because many of them are early in their career. They need that feedback. They need the support. And many of them don't get that if they're in a remote setting. They don't get the chance for someone to see, hey, course correct a little bit here, or I'm helping develop you for this next role there, or all those other sort of things that wrap around that. They're missing it and they're looking for that. So when you're talking about how it's so varied, it's so different, there's so many different needs. And when managers can't see those things, it creates this negative ripple effect, essentially, down the way. Okay, so I'm making my notes over here, listening to both of you share on some of those things. When you mentioned a ground up approach, being more forward looking, that was part of what Hope had shared. Small course corrections over time, talking about the recognition, the feedback, the little bits and pieces. Debra, you brought that in. What are other things we can do? Let's say someone out there listening is saying, okay, I'm making a list. I've got a couple things I've got to walk into this conversation with today. Hope and Debra are professors up here teaching the master class. What are some of the things you need to walk away with as some ideas on how to do it better, and what sort of impacts should they look for?
A couple of thoughts. One, there is nothing more important than the relationship between the manager and their team member. And you have to build that relationship grounded in trust. Part of what an employee needs to see is that their manager makes time for them on a recurring basis. And the reason that people typically will reschedule one-on-ones is because they don't have the right structure in those one-on-ones to make them valuable to the manager and to the team member. So my first step is recommending that you have a really strong, well-balanced agenda and a recurring one-on-one. I always recommend weekly. Yes, there are times that there are exceptions, but for the most part, if you took the time to hire somebody and have them on your team, you should give them the privilege and the opportunity to have recurring feedback and investment from you as their leader. There is nothing more important than that. Building the trust, providing the feedback in the moment when they can do something about it to help them achieve their objectives. Balance that with not only the work objectives, but understanding where they want to go in their career, where they want to grow, what they want to learn, so that you can weave that in. And it creates this virtuous cycle. It's like the heartbeat of your work relationship is to keep that regular one-on-one meeting where you can connect and celebrate wins, where you can review where they're struggling, where you can help them get unblocked so that they can succeed, and where you build that relationship.
Yeah. One thing I'd add to that is whenever I talk to a new leader, I always remind them that the most important meetings that they'll have that week in any week is the one-on-ones with their teams, right? And everything that you said is 1,000% spot on. The one thing that I always like to add in within the appropriate boundaries, I also like to know what's going on in your life, right? Like, is there other stuff that's causing some level of, stressors that may show up in your work in a little bit of a different way, and just giving them that space to vent or to, just share what's going on, but really being able to have a full view of your employee, understand what motivates them, really understand what they've got going on in other places, and where those areas from a work perspective that they need to get unblocked, or places that they're really excited about learning more about. And sometimes those are the best conversations to have, when you learn that you've got somebody that's really interested in product, and as you learn about them and you learn about like the skills that you see that they don't see, and there's that beautiful match. That's one of the things that I love the most about being a leader, is really being able to make those connections and helping them with the confidence that they need to potentially shift into a very different role than what they ever saw themselves in. So, when I think about one-on-ones, it's more than just that, hey, here's your feedback, here's what you're doing, here's all the things. Like, I'm always thinking about like, how can we help them become more well-rounded as a human?
Yep.
I would agree with that. I think one of the joys of leading others is finding ways to marry up the things they're doing and the directions they can go, the tasks they can participate in, with the things that really light their fire and get them excited. Because any of us can just dole out work to anyone. Any of us can do that. It takes no special skill. But the really great leaders that I can point to that I've had, and the leader I try to model myself after, is what sort of signals I'm picking up. Hey, Debra's really curious when I talk about the forecast, the budget. Do you want to sit down when I do this budget and watch how I do it, and sort of gets the inside? Mm-hmm. What's cool to me is that with teams everywhere saying, oh gosh, we're asked to do so much stuff, more with less, we have no budget for this or that. Like, that costs nothing to say, hey, do you want to come alongside me, sit here for a few minutes, watch what I'm doing, ask questions? It's a development opportunity. And you may find out, hey, next year, Deborah's going to do the first cut of the budget, save me some time. She's going to be thrilled with that new opportunity to try something out. And again, it's a reminder that I'm seeing those signals from you. I'm telling you all over again that I appreciate what you bring to the table. And again, that requires effort and intent. But when you do that, that relationship you create is very different than the one where it's, again, what have you done for me lately? What do you do for me next? That's where most managers end up falling into that routine, because that's as far as they've been modeled for themselves.
That's exactly it. You have to start with the humanness. That's right. And build from there.
I mean, not to be all Bonusly, but Bonusly is the perfect way to see something you may not have that may never come up in a one-on-one. You may see that somebody's going and helping the data team and they're getting all of these Bonusly points or kudos or credits or whatever, however it is set up within that organization. And then you get to see, wow, I saw that you have been partnering closely with the data team and you helped solve this challenge, or you gave them some insight that they weren't aware of. And that's just a really nice way to kind of start a conversation around something they probably never even thought was important or something that was meaningful to have a conversation with their manager about.
You may jump in and spend half an hour, and to you, it's just one more thing in your week, but to them, it was the biggest moment that helped them pivot from, oh goodness, to, oh yeah, like that big moment for them. And you never really know. And again, as a leader, you don't have that transparency and visibility. That's super powerful.
That's it. People are hungry to be seen and valued, not just for what they produce, but for who they are. Yeah. And recognizing where they're contributing to others, where they're helping other teams, recognizing their birthday or major life milestones or anniversaries, actually acknowledging that. There's nothing better than walking into a one-on-one with somebody and realizing it's their birthday. And the first thing that you say is, happy birthday. How has your day been? It's so easy to miss tiny milestones, which are not tiny to the individual, in the hustle and bustle of life. So we have to make it easy for people. I'm convinced that people want to have a more human experience at work, that outdated tools, outdated process, and some of the challenges in just the pace at which we move make it difficult. So we have to make it easy for people.
Yes. I know that Bonusly has been putting out some resources around that piece, the human side of work and so on. And the thing that I come back to over and over again is we can get caught up in the treadmill of being endlessly more productive, kind of get more things accomplished, more things done. But I hope there's ever been a day where you're like, I got all these things done, and tomorrow I hope I can do even more. Usually it's like, oh goodness, that was exhausting. I hope that the work that I do tomorrow is more meaningful or more human or more connected to others. Like we know innately that's where we're supposed to spend our time. And yet there's this pressure to just do more. And that never leaves us satisfied and doesn't leave the organization at its best either.
That's right.
So one of the things I wanted to ask about, I think in part, we are preaching to the choir. We are telling all of our friends out there in HR that are listening right now, these things matter, and they know they matter. We're giving some good ideas, some good tidbits and pieces today to think about that and their strategies and so on. But they have managers who are going to either make this or break this. And I want to talk about that piece for a little bit. We have hinted at it a little bit, the importance of, hey, listen, what's going on in your personal life real quick? I want to check in. You mentioned that you are getting a new dog. How's that going? Or you said that your child was sick the other day, or they had the big baseball game or whatever else. Like just knowing the person matters. The research we have says that if an employee says my manager does not understand me, statistically, there's like 1% chance of them saying they support me. So almost zero chance of them saying they support them if they don't know and understand them. And that's beyond their job title and pay rate. That's what makes them tick. And so how do we'll start with you, Hope, get managers along for this journey, get them on board, get them participating and active, not just like along for the journey, but how do we get them to be willing participants in this? Any thoughts?
I think that they have to truly understand like the tangible benefits that go along with thinking a little bit different. And it's not just checking off the box, right? Or moving to the next task, those types of things. I think when she'll understand those benefits, right, which is obviously improved team performance, creating better relationships, not just inside your team, but with others and the rest of the company and even customers. And it just continues to make that flow without. And obviously, if you've got those two things working really well, you're going to have a more engaged workforce, which tends to be a lot more productive. So for me, those things are very important to understand, like, wow, if I do this, I might get this in return. It may take a little bit of time to get there. And then I think the other thing is making sure you have the right tools and the right training in place as well. Recognition platforms are great. Best practices are great. A real-time performance review or a real-time performance tool that could be used that you can also go back and look at, like, wow, we had a great 3 months. What's going on these 3 months? You can use all of that information and use that data to really create a process that works for you as a leader, works for the company, but it creates something that's seamless and a lot more effective.
Okay, I made some notes on those. Good ideas, good takeaways. Debra, anything to add?
I think a couple things. One, we need to make sure that we have reasonable expectations for our managers. And so we have to advocate with leadership to have appropriate span of control. People cannot have 16 direct reports and have individual responsibilities for work output as well and do a great job at all of it. That's just the reality. And so I feel like if we demonstrate to managers that we can take some things off of their plate so that they can bring their best to helping their teams fully perform, that the buy-in on managers is going to be easier than the buy-in for senior leadership. Senior leadership is accustomed to having a score that is akin to the ROI on their people investment. And that is typically what the performance review process produces for them. And so we need to find a way, and this is part of what we do with our Achieve product. We have to find a way to be able to demonstrate that ROI in real time. You can look back over the course of 6 months or a year at any point in time and see how things are doing. If you are capturing the feedback, the goal completion, the accomplishments in real time with the right tooling. And so really getting your C-level executives on board with the same type of output. We can definitely prove the ROI on your people investment, but it's generated in a different way. It's actually not riddled with recency bias and manager and employee fatigue for all the hours that they spend trying to build those performance reviews once or twice a year. And it's delivered in a way that keeps a pulse on performance and the business. So it's not something different than what people have been saying that they want. It's just it hadn't been delivered previously. And so we just have to prove that.
On the manager expectations thing, I was looking at a piece of data just this morning that all of us, when you hear it, you're like, of course, logically, that makes total sense. And yet it still is being done right now. So someone's making this decision. But this researcher looked at different organizations that are cutting out, there's been news stories about cutting out middle managers and trying to make flatter, leaner organizations. What you see is that as manager span of control grows, they have more people that report to them, their workday, their hours starts to tail up in the wrong direction. They're doing more work. And as you're saying, we're expecting more out of them. We're not paying them anymore. We're not helping them. We're not necessarily giving them anything else. It's just good luck managing more people. Yeah. And that's a recipe for failure. They're going to struggle with that.
It is, for sure.
So the span of control, the expectations piece is important. I touched on this earlier, but modeling, showing them, and I think Hope, you mentioned like training, how we're developing these people. What we found in some of our research is that when companies are talking about training their managers, oftentimes it's, by the way, here's our anti-discrimination policy, and here's how you have to do this. And oh, by the way, you have to support your people, and here's the training on that. They just lump it all together. And it's treated with the same level of interest as all the others. It sort of just melds in, and they just lose that. Instead of saying, we're going to pause for a minute and all of your onboarding and everything else as a leader, whether you've been here and you're promoted or you're brand new to the company, and say, this is the most important job you have here. Leading, developing, guiding people. That's going to have an incredible impact on the success of the company. Here's how you do that well. This is what it looks like, not just across the board, but here at this company. And I feel like that's a miss for a lot of companies. We assume too much. We assume that they're good to go there, that they have the vision, that they know what it takes, and that we're missing a chance to help. Again, bring them, I keep using the phrase, but bring them along that journey of what greatness looks like here. Mm-hmm. All right. So we're about to wrap up shortly, but I'm going to put both of you on the hot seat for just one quick takeaway. One thing that you think the audience needs to know. And you can double down on something you've shared already. It can be something else we haven't brought up because just the conversation's been in all these different areas so far. But if you want someone out there listening right now to go away and make that impact they're hoping to with their approach to performance, their approach to recognition, weaving those things together. What would you give them as a piece of advice? Closing shot. Debra, I'll let you start.
I would say start now and start making the moves. Don't try to bite it all off at one time. Really focus in on the incremental changes that you can make to build trust in the workplace, to prepare your managers to be successful, and to eliminate the unnecessary processes. I think if we all stepped back for a few minutes and looked around, there are things that we do that don't actually add value. If we can start by eliminating some of those and freeing up the space, you give managers and their teams the capacity to do the work in the right way.
I love that. Start now, start small, but just start. Okay.
Yes.
I like it. I'm paraphrasing there, but I love that. Okay.
Yours was better than mine. So that's why you
I
host.
got a chance to listen to you and then reflect. So I put you on the spot. Hope, what do you have for us?
Yeah, for me, create those moments that matter. I know we all say that in an HR organization, but truly do that. And you can do that even if you're not in HR. You can do that just as being a human, a leader, a teammate, your leaders and teammates all day long. Create those moments that matter and provide that real-time feedback. A little bit goes a long way. And if you feel uncomfortable about calling someone saying, hey, I just wanted to say you did a really great job at that presentation. You don't have to be their manager. You can be their peer. Or, hey, I thought you could have explained this a little bit differently, but now I understand it. If you just take that moment, because you want to treat people the way that you want to be treated, right? And sometimes you could be the person that changes the whole week for the person you're giving the feedback to, right? And hopefully that happens on both sides, the positive and the more constructive feedback that you give. So for me, I'm just going to make it super simple, is just do it in the same exact way, but just a little bit differently.
Yes, I like that. I like it. You were talking about your son earlier, finding the arrowhead. And I'm thinking about when my son was at the park the other day, and there was a kid walking around. My son loves like camouflage for some reason. I don't know why, but he does. And there was a boy walking around in this really cool camo jacket. And he said, man, that's nice. I said, why don't you go tell him you like his jacket? Well, I said, listen, never hesitate, never miss a chance to bring someone a smile, to bring someone some joy. And it's what you're saying there, Hope. Like, don't miss a chance. Just go do it, because even if it's a little bit uncomfortable for you, that could be the highlight of that person's day, their week, their month. Let me remember that for years later. And I've seen that myself when I was working as an HR leader. Someone would get a kudos for finishing something big on a project or some recognition. And you go by their desk 2 years later and it's all dusty, it's all faded, but it's still sitting right there. And they look at it every day because that matters to them so deeply. So it's such a powerful set of insights here. I've enjoyed this so much. If someone wants to connect, wants to follow you, wants to keep up to date with what you're up to, Hope, can they connect you on LinkedIn? What's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn is likely the best way to connect with me. I do get a lot of messages, so it may take me a few minutes, a little while to get back to you, but please feel free to connect, send me a message, whatever feels best.
Okay, perfect. Debra, for you?
Awesome. Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with people who are looking to make work better and just share what they're seeing, what they're doing. And you can also find out more information about Bonusly at bonusly.com.
Perfect. Awesome. So thank you to both of you again. This has been a fun conversation. I've got some good notes and ideas out of this. I know all of you out there in the audience have as well. Remember, ultimately, encourage your people to be human, support each other, grow each other, and you're going to create a better environment for every single person to do their best work every day. We'll catch you again next time on We're Only Human.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.